Hey, I'm Daniel Norton here in my studio in New York City.
Hi, I'm Marissa Roper, and I'm also here in Daniel's studio in New York City.
People really wouldn't notice that if they just saw it.
Yeah.
It's not a split screen or anything like that.
I'm CGI'd in.
Oh, that would be pretty useful, actually. We could CGI immersive. So today we're going to talk about light meters. So we're kind of following up on our exposure conversation, right? And like I said in that one, there is a meter in your camera, which we used last time. But sometimes you might want to use a handheld light meter. There's a lot of reasons to do that. One of them is if you want to set up when your subject's not there, right? Remember that if you're in, let's say, a room and you want to get exposure, you want to set up lights, you could actually walk around the light meter and set all your numbers before the person sits in. If you have a camera and you have to look, that takes time. So if you want to preset lights, or if you want to set certain ratios, like you've done something before a certain way and you want this one brighter than that one, you can set all those up ahead of time using this.
But wouldn't it matter depending on the skin tone of your subject?
That is a perfect question. So this is also what they call an incident meter. So your reflected meter, like in the camera, reads the light bouncing off your subject. So that would matter. Skin tone, right? If it's bouncing off, remember we talked about last time, it's bouncing off a white wall, it's going to underexpose because it's trying to make it gray. Mm-hmm. This one measures the amount of light falling on the subject.
Oh, okay.
So it doesn't matter. No matter what you put in front of it, the exposure will always be the same.
Cool.
In theory. Everything's always in theory. In science, actually. In scientific theory. I always say, and I get tons of comments, so we'll get ready for the comments, that you use the meter to set things up, then you still have to look and use your eyes. But people are always like, no, the meters. I mean, it's measuring the amount of light, and just like before, it's going to try to find that neutral gray. But you might find that you prefer an exposure slightly different. So what it's going to do, though, is you're going to put this bulb. Okay, so there's two schools of thought on this, and you can decide because which school of thought you'd like to be. Some people prefer to put the bulb facing the camera. Mm-hmm. The idea here is this is round, right, like somebody's face, and that your light's covered from here, so it's metering the light and then also the shadow side and giving you a medium. Other people put the bulb towards the light source because they think all I really care about is how much the light is, like the amount of light. So you can do it either way. The difference will vary depending on the types of lights. I tend to lean towards the pointing it at the light source, but you can do it however you like. This does also have the ability to be, by the way, guys, this is the Sekonic L308. This also has the ability to be a reflected meter, so if you wanted to use it the other way, you'd flip this back and then just put it close to your subject and do it that way.
Oh, okay, so is it reflected meter like that captures
the light bouncing off of you.
Okay.
Right, if you wanted to use it that way. I never use this one that way, but you do have that ability.
Cool.
So incident meter, right, amount of light falling on the bulb. So we're gonna point it either towards the light or towards the camera. It's gonna give us a reading. So how does that work, right? So we're gonna turn it on for you. So you put in your ISO. With this particular meter, at least as far as I know, you can't have it pick an ISO for you. Some more advanced meters, you can. So that's something you're always gonna put in. You do that simply by holding down the ISO button and you move, see these guys here, up and down arrow.
Oh, okay.
Right. Since for what we're doing it doesn't actually matter, I'm just gonna leave it at 100. Now in this first mode, which is an available light mode or an ambient light mode, you put in your shutter speed. So I have it at a 30th right now, but you could change it to a 40th, 50th, 60th, whatever. And then when you press this button in, it's going to give you an f-stop or an aperture, right? So 3.2 in that case. Once you've got that set, because remember the exposure triangle, if we change any of these numbers, like let's say I change my ISO now, you see the other number is going to change because it's balancing out the triangle for you.
Gotcha.
So that's that. If you want to put your aperture in instead of your shutter speed, you can also do that. You switch to this mode. I'm just going to take a reading here to kind of clear it. And what it'll do is you put your aperture in, and then it will give you a shutter speed.
Nice.
Right? Now, those are the two ambient modes. There's also the EV mode. We talked about EV a little bit. EV is like a fixed value. There's very few cameras that use that. I wouldn't worry too much about it. Mm-hmm. So probably you won't use that. This is flash mode. You can see the lightning bolt. This is what they call non-corded flash. So that means that you put in your shutter speed and you put in your ISO, and then you press the button and you can see this is flashing here. It's waiting for a flash. In the next video, we're going to do with flash. So we'll talk about that then. So we're just going to skip that for now. But that's basically how you do a flash exposure. It would give you an f-stop. And this is corded flash. There's actually a little thing underneath this. I won't be able to pull it out. I'll lose this as I lose it. But there's a little space here where you can plug in a cord if you want to do a corded flash. But I mean, that's so rare people use that these days. So what you're mostly going to use is, honestly, for me, I prefer to use the one where you put the shutter speed in because that's how a lot of older meters were, and I'm just used to using it that way. But if you prefer to put the aperture in, you can do that as well. Either way works.
Cool.
So I just have a constant light set up here for us, just so we can practice this. So first I'm gonna do a meter reading of you, and then I'll have you do one of me, and we'll see how it works. So I'm gonna put it in this mode where you set your shutter speed, and I'm gonna set the shutter speed. I'm gonna start here at 1/125th of a second. Okay, so I like to, like I said, I like to point towards the camera. So one thing you want to do is the light's coming from here, right? So I don't want to meter you like this, right? Because what's that going to do, right? I'm between the lights here. I want to stand so that do that. It's giving me an aperture of what?
2.
Right, and we know, well, you might not know, because it's my camera. I know that I have an f4 lens, which means I cannot go to f2.
Oh, okay.
So we can now, using the exposure triangle, just push our shutter speed down until we get to f4, which gives us
1/30th of a second.
that's right. So 30th of a second, f4, 100 ISO. And that would be our, boom, that's it. All right, so I'm gonna, oh, it saves the reading. How nice. Not that I think you would cheat. F22 over there. Okay, so I'm gonna leave it in that mode, and then I'm gonna stand on my spot, and you're gonna meter me, and then don't tell me what it says.
Okay.
Then you're gonna go over to the camera and take a picture, and we'll see how it comes out.
And set it with those settings?
That's right.
Got it.
Well, that would make the most sense. You could set it with any setting you want, but if you want it to be right. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Are you ready?
I think so. All right, now stand on your spot.
All right.
Oh wait, actually, how do I make the light meter go?
All right, there, I didn't show you that. I did not show you that part. The top button.
Gotcha.
You don't have to hold it, just press it.
All right, cool.
Oh yes, I feel very pretty right now. Do, 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 do,
Oh,
do,
it's
do,
dark.
do. It's gonna be dark because I preset the camera.
Alrighty, so I'll go through this. And then I've got to do this. Oh, I see. Now it's light. Okay, there you go. All right, say cheese.
Nice. Oh, there's a picture there. All right, let's look. All right, let's look, see what we got. Oh, I look good there. Good framing. No. Oh, wow. Okay, I'm smiling. It is.
There you go.
All right, so, well, of course, we know it's the same setting because we knew that, right? So, right, now we're going to look. Again, if you were shooting film and you didn't have a computer and you didn't know whatever, you would just use that setting, hopefully, and it would be right. After a while, you get used to, back in the days of using film, you would get used to like your films, so you would set them slightly different to know your exposure. But for digital, all we have to do, just like as always, we go into Capture One, we punch in, and there I am. Looking good, as always. Oh, you know what I have too? I set you up for failure here. Because I have the focus spot set way over there.
Oh, in the middle, yeah.
Yeah, it didn't focus on my head. You focused on my chest, but that's okay.
Oops.
That's all right, I can't use this one for Tinder now. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna look at this and just see if it looks right to us. And I think that's pretty much what I look like.
Exposure-wise, yeah.
Yeah. Now, if it was light or dark, you could of course adjust, just like we always have done in the past. And also going back to the histogram, if you remember, you see this and see how we have this big group in the center? Mm-hmm. That's because the majority of our photo, right, a big chunk of it is gray because of the gray backgrounds, right? And if you wanted to know for sure, like if you were to move the hand over like my forehead, you can see on the histogram, if I move it over, they can't see it, I'll point to you, but they won't be able to see it. It's like right over 1. That's about right for my skin tone. Because I am pale, right? Exactly. You know, and again, you can get used to people's skin tone, and if you wanted to match it from shot to shot, you could do that. You can also get used to what your background should look like, and you can just know these numbers if you want, but all you really have to worry about is that, like before, we don't want to be blown out, so not like way on the right-hand side and not way on the dark side. You want to make sure you have a little gap over there. We do see we have a spike in black because obviously I'm wearing a black shirt. We can see that. And then the majority of the shot, you can see all that gray, right? That's basically it. Cool. And the meter did a good job.
Cool.
And you did a good job. So simple as that, guys. That's how you use the light meter, right? It's not essential. People are always like, do I need a light meter? No, but it does help you really think about photography because you have to think about the numbers. And also it allows you to repeat things. The way that I normally use a light meter, more so than what we just did here, is, let's say that I was setting up a set of portraits and I got this and this looked good. And I just used the meter on the camera. What I would do from that point is I would then meter the light and make notes of it. Then when I go to a different space and I have to set up the lights again, I can re-meter it to make sure it's the same.
So I have a question. So if we, like in our last lesson when we shot Sheila, light meter basically had it slightly or not the camera's light meter had her slightly underexposed because it was trying to make everything gray.
That's right.
If we use this light meter on Sheila, would it give me the same reading that it gave for you, or would it give me another one
Yes,
because she's
it would give you the same reading. Because no matter what you put there, right, in theory, because you're measuring the amount of light. So this is why this is great. This is measuring the amount of light that's falling, which means that no matter who steps there, somebody really pale like me, somebody with darker skin tone, if you're shooting product, different types of product, it won't matter. It will always be the same exposure because it's measuring the light falling on there.
But so you're going to have to adjust it probably afterwards.
No.
Really?
No,
Even?
like if you went in there, I mean, we're pretty much the same skin tone, but if you go in there, no matter what you put in front of it, that should be the right exposure.
Even like for Sheila?
That's right, even for Sheila. I know, right? It's weird. And that's because it's measuring the amount of light falling on it. Like if we were to put Sheila in there now, it would show that she is, it would say it was, the exposure was wrong. But then when we took the picture, it would be right. You know what I'm saying? Because measuring the amount of light falling on something versus measuring the amount of light reflecting off of something. That's
Okay.
the difference between the two types of metering.
So if you wanted to get the light falling off, you would just move this over? and get-
That's right.
Oh,
Yeah, if you want that.
cool.
Sometimes that's useful. People often will do that if you're trying to read highlights. Like, so let's say you're doing jewelry. You might use a reflected meter that was a spot meter, which I'm not going to bust out right now, and read the highlights to make sure they're not blowing out. That's like one way to do it. Or if you were shooting out the window, like there's reasons to do a reflected meter. But if you're doing studio stuff like we're doing, incident is just going to be simpler.
So I guess I still don't understand.
Okay.
Because I was thinking you would need less light for somebody that's really pale and more light for somebody that has darker skin. So if it's the same amount of light, wouldn't it be wrong for a different? Is that?
No. See, that is a common thought, right? I get this all the time. The amount of light falling on somebody, if assuming you want people to look the way that they look, this is the big caveat, then depending on how dark they are, it should matter if you're reading the light falling on them, right? Because
Okay.
they will look, like a darker skinned person will look darker than you
okay.
because they are. Right, but if you were to point a reflected meter at your skin and then a reflected meter at a very dark person's skin, the reading would be different. Because in both cases, it would be trying to make them gray.
Oh, okay.
But this doesn't care about what's in front of the lens, it only cares about the
Gotcha.
light falling on it.
So so it'll capture them as they are.
That's right.
That makes sense.
Which makes it much more useful, I think, metering wise, and which was the reason why a handheld meter is useful versus using the in-camera meter.
Gotcha.
Not that the reflective meter doesn't work pretty well if you understand it.
Gotcha.
Oh, and also remember, like what I talked about before, like if you put somebody in front of a window, you'd have to put like exposure compensate, like you'd have to adjust it because it would be wrong. That would not be the case here, because you would be reading the light coming on the other side, right? You don't care about the
Yeah.
light coming back. It's only reading what's in the front of the person.
That makes sense.
So it's very useful to have a light meter. Do you need one right away? Not necessarily, but will it help you understand light more? I think so. Right.
Cool.
The other thing you can use with it, the other reason why it's useful to have a meter like this is if you want to measure the evenness of your light. Because if you were to use the camera meter, it's just giving you like an idea, right? But I could actually take this light meter and be like, okay, this is the exposure on your face, this is the exposure on your feet, and if they're not the same, I could adjust my lights.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
So-
that just gives you more precision.
If you want somebody to look the way that they look to your eye, you use this one. And if you want them to look like most of the photo is gray, you would use this one.
That's right. Yeah, if you ever wanted
There
them
you
to look that way. Exactly. Yeah, that's basically it. So, and we've done this, Dave knows, Dave's behind the camera, that we've done this in live demos where people will be like, oh, what if somebody with darker skin was under that light? And I literally have had them stand there and they look exactly the way they look. It
That
doesn't
makes sense.
matter.
Yeah.
Because when people teach you that you have to change the exposure for skin tone, they're talking about reflective meters, not about
Yeah.
incident meters, which is what that is.
Yeah. And so this is the incident meter. This is
That's reflected. Exactly.
Yay.
You got it. Okay, cool. Next video, we're gonna do flash, which is gonna be as soon as our model arrives. So when you see us next time, we'll be doing flash. If there's something you wanna see us do, besides dance, which we just did, so you already have that, then go ahead and put a comment below. Subscribe. Should they subscribe?
Yeah, man.
And ring the bell and all that?
Yeah, ring the bell.
And we'll see you next time.